we got? PFT PM posse, could first-round running backs negotiate a no franchise transition, et cetera, tag into the rookie contracts, making them unrestricted free agents once their rookie contract expires? Now, I mean, the CBA is what it is. And I suppose that a running back could say, even though I've got a slotted 4-year contract that is mandatory and I can't renegotiate until after 3 years, and if I'm a first-round pick, they have a 5th-year option they can use on me, I guess you could agree that there'd be no franchise tag on the back end. We've seen it in veteran contracts. But who would agree to it? Who would agree to it? What are you going to do? Hold out? Re-enter the draft? I want a commitment. You're not going to tag me? I mean, the problem is more fundamental than that. The solution is something more basic. They need to go back to square one and ask themselves, do running backs fit within this current system? Should we have a quicker path to free agency for running backs who are drafted? Should we have another fund that pays them when they're young and they're not getting paid much and they're doing far more dollar for dollar than any other player by way of presence on the field, touches, and what they do when they have the ball in their hands? Those are all questions that aren't going to be easily resolved because it requires the league and the union to resolve it, and they're the ones that created the current system that screws the running backs. Another one from PFT PM Posse. Why did the NFLPA give up any and all ability to collectively bargain over the gambling policy? I mean, this one was an eye-opener for me. When I saw the email that was sent by the union to the agents after the April suspensions, after that hit the fan, the union communicated with the agents, not the players, to remind them of the policy. And the union explained that this is not collectively bargained. The gambling policy is unilaterally imposed by the NFL. I asked the NFL about that, and they said, yeah, this flows from the commissioner's power to preserve the integrity of the game. Now, the only thing that shows up in the CBA isn't even in the document itself. It's in paragraph 14 of the standard contract that players sign, dealing with integrity of the game. It doesn't mention gambling directly, doesn't mention a gambling policy. This all kind of flows from that. And the union has just gone along with it. And I've said I think that's a mistake. I think the league should have collectively bargained with the Players Association to get them to buy in, to get them to be right there hand in hand with the league when the time comes to try to educate the players, truly educate the players, not just check the box. Hey, they have the policy. We have the acknowledgement form that indicates they've received it. No, true understanding of what is and isn't required. And a sensible limit, a sensible set of rules on what can and can't be done. The union should have been involved in that. So the union just accepted. It's not our thing. It's the league's. And I think that's part of the problem. I think the union does need to be involved. And the union shouldn't just sit back and let the league set the rules. That the union should be thinking, how best do we create this policy in a way that advances the overall best interests of our players? And I think it's in the league's best interest to have the union engaged in it. It is something that requires plenty of improvement, I believe. It's one of the reasons I keep talking about it, because this is something that can cause serious damage to the game that we all love. And I feel like the people who have their fingers on the button don't really understand the danger the way they should, or they don't take it as seriously as they could, or they have a hard time balancing the inherent hypocrisy of the league making so much money from sports books and owners owning equity in sportsbook companies that they really can't engage in that full-throated do as we say, not as we do effort to get the players to comply with whatever the league wants them to do. T-Fish, with the Commanders finally getting a new owner, is there any chance they actually get a stadium in D.C.? When the possibility first came up in November of last year of the Snyders selling, someone in a position of significant influence in NFL circles said, hey, look, they get a new owner, they're going to get the keys thrown to them for the D.C. site. Now, you still have to come up with the money, but the reality is nobody wanted to deal with Daniel Snyder. No political entities, no one. He was toxic. It was run the other way instead of deal with Dan Snyder, because even if you're comfortable dealing with him, there was a concern that he's going to find a way to screw you. I'm not saying that he would. I'm not saying that he ever did. I don't want to get sued by Dan Snyder on his way out the door, but there was a belief, there was a fear, there was a concern that working with this guy wasn't going to lead anywhere good. It wasn't a popular thing to do. You get a new owner in there, all of a sudden the ice thaws and you have an opportunity to go get that stadium. That was part of the document that Josh Harris used. Instead of crowdfunding, like Aaron Rodgers did, Josh Harris put together a prospectus aimed at getting people to choose to invest in the effort to buy the Commanders. And he attached tangible value, dollars and cents, to the departure of Daniel Snyder. And one of the things that they believe will happen is Snyder out, free money in from taxpayers to build this stadium, whether it's in DC or somewhere else. But the RFK Stadium site remains viable. And that's the thing that I think a lot of Commanders fans would like to see happen. And once Snyder officially is out, plenty of things are possible that would have been impossible with Snyder as the owner of the team. David Stern's fan account, where do things stand with the Jets and Quinnen Williams? There's been plenty of talk about Williams getting that new contract that he believes that he deserves. He didn't boycott mandatory minicamp because there wasn't one. You know, the past couple of weeks were all about who's showing up and who isn't for mandatory minicamp. That was giving us some clues as to how serious some of these holdouts were, some of these contractual impasses might be. Remember, the Jets canceled their mandatory minicamp, so we never saw how serious Quinnen Williams is about drawing that line in the sand and maybe paying about $100,000 in fines to stay away from mandatory camp. We'll see if he shows up for training camp. The team is confident they'll get it done. And you've got a cluster of defensive tackles in that 22.5 to 23.5 range. Then you've got a gap of about $8 million up to Aaron Donald. The question is, how high up that $8 million ladder does Quinnen Williams want to go? But there's optimism they'll get it figured out. But we'll see. We'll see what it takes. Rob Buffalo, 2 questions. Any Lego projects during the hiatus? I do want to finish this. I've shown this before. This is just the first couple of steps of a typewriter. I think this is like, because it's like a functional typewriter. I don't think it actually types, but you press the button and for those of you who don't know what a typewriter is, it's a machine where you press the button and this arm would swing up and actually strike the paper with whatever letter corresponded to it. That's how we typed in the old days. I actually had one of those old typewriters where you'd hit that button and the whole arm. And I thought it was so neat to see the whole arm swing up and hit the page. And there would be a ribbon there that the letter would hit, and it would impress onto the page a little piece of ink that would be A, B, C, D, E, whatever. So anyway, I'm working on that. There it is. That's it. And I haven't even done anything with it the past few days. I may start on it at some point this week. More importantly, and more relevant to why we're here, what are your thoughts on the miscommunications, lack of coordination with Sean McDermott and Stefon Diggs' comments between Tuesday and Wednesday? More, who's at fault? This is something that we just don't know. I wrote about this yesterday. We don't know last Tuesday when Diggs was there. Remember, he'd been there on Monday for a physical and for meetings with Sean McDermott, the head coach, and Brandon Beane, the GM. He was back on Tuesday for more meetings. And then he left before practice. And we had that statement from Sean McDermott. He's very concerned that Diggs isn't here. And then the agent goes on the record and says, he's there. Basically, I don't know what you're talking about. He's there, and he intends to participate in everything. Then the next day, he's back, and McDermott's acting like nothing happened. In the interim, Diggs went to social media and accused somebody of telling lies. So I think that what we don't know is what happened that led to Diggs leaving. Argument, raised voices, disagreement. Who said what to whom? Who got mad first? Who said, maybe we should just take a break here? Did Diggs storm out, or was Diggs asked to leave? And I think back to the Antonio Brown departure from the Buccaneers on the field, January of 2022. We thought initially that it was Brown just quitting on the Bucs, but then when you started to hear more of it, it was Bruce Arians, then the coach of the Bucs, telling Brown to get the hell out. So what really happened there? Did McDermott tell Diggs to get out? Did somebody else tell Diggs to get out? Or did Diggs just storm out? So whatever happened last week, it feels like there is a tenuous and tentative truce that may or may not last, but it just adds more pressure to the Bills this year because they need to keep Stefon Diggs happy. They need to first get him happy. Then they need to keep him happy. And they need to hope at the end of the season, he'll be happy. That's really the question. Whatever they do now feels temporary. It feels like a one-year thing only. And then after this year, Diggs will see how he feels. The Bills will find out how he feels. And the question will be, what changes need to be made, if any, to make Diggs happy? Whether it's changes in the organization, whether it's a change for Diggs that involves being traded to a new team. And if they would do it after June 1 of next year. Now, pre-June 1, you're looking at a $33 million dead cap charge. Post-June 1 of next year, it would be a lot lower than that. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if they were going to do it, they could do it next year after June. It would be a lot easier than doing it between now and June 1 of next year. Jimmy Jack's Jags. Why does Florio love drama and hate the Jaguars so much? Well, that's two different questions, Jimmy Jack's Jags. One, I love drama because drama is good for business. Real drama. Real drama. I don't like to manufacture it. I do like to ferret it out. I do like to take a story where maybe the attitude, and we see this from time to time, of the team, of the coach, of the player, of the league, whoever, is nothing to see here, and you scratch the surface a little bit because there is something to see that they just don't want us to see. I love that kind of stuff. And look, pretty much every year I've been doing this, the offseason has had some lingering story that is a gift that keeps on giving. This is the one year there hasn't been anything like it. And it shows. I mean, there's just nothing to draw people back every single day. What's the latest development with this? What's the latest development with that? There is nothing. Think about it. What's going on right now where we're waiting for the latest development, where it's a big deal? Yes, the Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins free agency, man, it's not something that covers a period of weeks and months. You know, Deflategate, Bountygate. What's the latest? What's the latest? What's the latest? There is no latest. I like it when there's a story that has the consumers of our content constantly coming back to see what the latest might be. Now, as to why I hate the Jags, I'm reminded of what Chris Collinsworth began to say when he was asked that question as it relates to whatever team it was, because every fan base, for somebody who does games, every fan base is convinced that that broadcaster hates their team based upon something that broadcaster said or didn't say during a game. So Chris Collinsworth tells a story. He eventually got to the point when someone asks him, why do you hate the Giants? Why do you hate the Jaguars? Why do you hate the Dolphins? Why do you hate the Packers? His response is, I just do. I kind of like that, but I'm not going to use that. That's his. The question about why I hate the Jaguars so much comes from the fact that I am scratching the surface over what's happening in Jacksonville as owner Shad Khan tries to get roughly $1 billion in taxpayer money to dramatically renovate his stadium. It is an inherently political exercise that the Jaguars are engaging in to try to get that money. They want that money. They want that $1 billion. They'll put up $1 billion, but they want $1 billion to renovate the stadium and build an entertainment district around it. They want that. If they don't get it, folks, they say we can't extend our lease that runs through 2029 without it. Well, what does that mean? We can't extend our lease. What does that mean? It means they're going to go somewhere else if they don't get what they want. So when I point that out, people in Jacksonville get mad. Well, folks, talk to some of your friends in St. Louis. Yeah, that was the team that Shad Khan owned a piece of and tried to buy before he bought the Jaguars. He made the offer. Well, no, he didn't own it. He owned a piece of it, but Stan Kroenke had a right of first refusal. Stan Kroenke matched whatever Shad Khan was going to do, and that's how he got the team. And what did he do? What did he do? What did he do? He moved it. And there was a period of time, 8, 9, 10 years ago, that I was trying to tell people in St. Louis, Stan Kroenke is going to move the Rams. And the response was, why do you hate the Rams so much? It's like, folks, I'm trying to help you here. You need to understand what's going on. You need to mobilize if you want to keep this team in town. So Jaguars fans, I'm doing you a favor here. You better wake up. If you want to keep the Jaguars, you better make the phone calls, send the emails, do whatever is necessary to come up with $1 billion, because that's the ransom to keep the team. It's going to take $1 billion. Remember what Rob Manfred said last week? the MLB commissioner, got to support the team. And it's more than just painting your face. It's more than just putting Jaguars, each letter on your chest and showing up at the stadium. You got to support the team more than that. You got to come up with money. Crowdfunding. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is right. It's what it is. It's crowdfunding. So me pointing this out isn't hatred. I'm trying to help you folks. Trying to help you out to understand which way the puck is going. It's going to London if you don't pay the $1 billion. And they won't put it that bluntly because it's unseemly. But that's what they're doing. Fans get upset when players are deemed to be greedy and selfish. They don't get all that upset when the owner, it's a great business person. What a shrewd capitalist. Here's the bottom line. You come up with $1 billion, or they're gone. They're not going to be able to extend their lease beyond 2029. If I really hated the Jaguars, I'd keep my mouth shut about it. And look, the Jaguars are still going to exist, whether they're in Jacksonville, London, or somewhere else. But for the folks in Jacksonville who would rather plug their ears and say, la, 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 not listening, that is a recipe for having what happened to St. Louis happen to you. Plain and simple. Now, I will say this. There was a difference. I think Stan Kroenke was hell-bent on moving that team to L.A. no matter what they did in St. Louis. And I think that's one of the reasons why the league ultimately had to pay nearly $800 million. In Jacksonville, I feel like if you come up with what they want, they're not going to say, well, no, that's not good enough. Or they're not going to move the goalposts on you to get more, all in the name of having a pretext where they can say, we tried, and you weren't willing to support the team, so we're moving to London. But here's the bottom line. There's an NFL-ready stadium in London where they're already playing one home game per year. They have a stadium in Jacksonville that they believe, with that and the surrounding entertainment district, needs $2 billion in investment, and they're willing to kick in half of it, which means you got to come up with the other $1 billion. And my point is this. If you don't, they're not going to stick around beyond the end of this decade, plain and simple. And that's not hatred of the team. That's just acknowledgement of reality. Matthew Steve, if the Eagles had won the Super Bowl, does the Jonathan Gannon pick swap still happen in your opinion? I don't think it does. I think if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, they're never in position where they go back and try to figure out why they lost the Super Bowl. They never go back and figure out what may have contributed to the fact that they had a 10-point lead in the second half and blew it. They never start down the rabbit hole of what may have distracted Jonathan Gannon, what may have kept him from being fully prepared to do what he had to do to run the defense in a way that would hold that double-digit lead. And they never realize that there was tampering that may have impacted and undermined the integrity of a Super Bowl. And I think it's all hush-hush because of that. But no, to merely be curious about it makes you one of the top 5 conspiracy theorists in the NFL. I think I said this yesterday, but I'm going to keep saying it because hopefully someone will get to the truth. I think the true story about what happened with Jonathan Gannon is a lot worse than anyone imagines. And I think if the Eagles had won the Super Bowl, they never would have even commenced the process of trying to figure it all out. Here's a question from Fantasy Duffman that I've seen, I think, yesterday and today. And I don't really understand it, but I'm going to try to answer it anyway. If you were a GM for an expansion team, what steps would you take to ensure success, such as coaching choice, tanking for good picks, selecting a quarterback early versus building the team first before selecting said quarterback? Look, there's a lot of stuff you have to do as a GM for an expansion team. And I don't know what I would do because I'm never going to be in that position. But I know this. There's no replacement for a truly great coach. I would want an offensive genius, and I would want to pair him up with a franchise quarterback, a young franchise quarterback, and I would want them to be together for 15 or 20 years. That's the recipe for sustained success, sustained contention, and maybe every few years an appearance in the Super Bowl. That's what I would want to do. That would be my goal. I would not tank, though. I think tanking makes good business sense, but I'm persuaded by folks like Sean Payton who say it's not conducive to a culture of winning if you are losing, if you're trying to lose, if you're not doing everything you can to win, that vibe gets into the locker room, and that poisons the ability to be as good as you possibly can be. Boy, I'm looking at the clock. So much for this one being a short one. What else do we have here? Dr. J144, it feels wrong to me that the Cardinals may be rewarded for tanking with the right to draft Caleb Williams. When is the NFL going to finally disincentivize tanking? Why does a poorly run franchise deserve the best college player when they've done nothing to earn it? Sims and I argued about this a few weeks back. I don't like it. I don't like that there's an incentive to be bad. We see the Cardinals in plain sight prioritizing 2024 over 2023. We see it. We know what they're doing. We know they don't intend to contend this year. And if they come out of it with the number 1 overall pick, that goes a long way toward making things better quickly. Now, you can argue, hey, I like an NFL where the worst team has a chance to turn it around. And they love parity. They love that every team is alive every given year. That's how it's set up. It's socialism, frankly. You know, that's a bad word in some circles. For the NFL, it's the way they do business. It's the way they share revenue among teams. It's the way they try to balance things out. They try to even it out. They don't want one dominant team. So they always try to help the worst team get better. But if you're intentionally trying to be the worst team, that's a problem. And the NFL doesn't have a solution for it. So the NFL just ignores the connection between being the worst team and having the best position when it comes to reloading your roster, because there is an incentive to be as bad as you can be. It's a good business decision. May not be a good football decision, but it's a good business decision. It worked for the Cincinnati Bengals. Not that they tanked to get Joe Burrow. They didn't have to. It just came naturally. For the Cardinals, though, here's the caveat. Caleb Williams is making a lot of money from NIL. He could stay at Southern Cal for another year. He could tell the Cardinals, I'm not coming out. Or he could tell the Cardinals, I'm not signing with you. I just won't play. I'll pass the point of no return, so I can't go back to USC. But I'm telling you, don't draft me. If you draft me, I'm not going to sign with you. And if they draft him, you know, I have enough in the bank between a couple of years of NIL money that he's making, you know, pretty good revenue. That's going to happen at some point. Someone is going to threaten to, if not act upon, a willingness to sit out for a full year and re-enter the draft to avoid being selected by a team that he doesn't want to play for. And he'll have the money in the bank to finance his lifestyle during that year, that he just stays in shape and prepares himself for the next draft. And by the next draft, hopefully the worst team, if he doesn't want to play for that team, will know we're wasting our time if we try to pick this guy again. So long story short, I don't like the NFL's current system. The NFL isn't going to do anything about it. I'm a proponent of a lottery that would have equal opportunity for every team that doesn't make the playoffs. That's the way to get rid of tanking altogether. And it would create one hell of an offseason tentpole event to have a draft lottery where every team that doesn't make the playoffs gets one ball in the hopper. And we find out who ends up with that number 1 overall pick. That would be something. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Oh boy, Dilip Rao has a question. I really don't want to get into questions about witch hunts and selective prosecution. And does it? No. This is our respite from the things that would otherwise cause us to lose sleep at night. There's another question from Dilip. No, I'm not doing the non-football political stuff. I can't, and I won't. This is where we seek sanity and serenity.
Don't do it.
Serenity now. Serenity now. My Father's Day card from my son. I'm going to take it to heart. Okay. Let's just call it. If I didn't, let's do this. Because this dovetails with what I said about the Jaguars. Our good friend, A-Red Zona UK, Tom Marshall from across the Atlantic Ocean says, are the Jaguar stadium plans in Florida foolproof that any thoughts of a move over here to London are a long way off? Here's what it comes down to, just to summarize and to put a bow on this one. If the folks in Florida cough up $1 billion in taxpayer money, and if it's not all some ruse by Shad Khan to make the locals an offer they'll never accept and set a bar that they'll never meet, right? If he truly is serious, and I think he is, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's serious about staying in Jacksonville over the long haul if they'll give him $1 billion to have this renovated stadium and this entertainment district that he covets. If that's true, then they're not moving. There'll be a 30-year lease on the back end of this thing. They'll be in Jacksonville through 2059. And who knows? Maybe that marks an end to the annual home game in London. Maybe there's another team that would slide into that role. But it doesn't make sense for the Jaguars to keep playing a game every year in London if they do have a 30-year commitment to never move. And this goes back to, I remember Peter King reporting on this years ago. The NFL wanted eventually to have one team that would go back every year to build a fan base there. What's the point of having a fan base there if somebody else is going to be the team that moves there? So I think that so much of the future of the NFL in London and the NFL in Jacksonville comes down to whether or not they get this $1 billion to renovate the stadium. If they don't, they go to London. If they do, they're out of the mix. Through my lifetime, at least 2059. Let me do the math there. Holy shit balls. 94. Yeah, it won't be my problem when that 30-year lease ends. So the Jaguars won't be going to London in my lifetime. Maybe they'll be going to London in yours. Anyone out there who will be around in 2059 when the new lease would end. All right, PFT PM ends. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition. As always, check us out around the clock at profootballtalk.com. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being part of the broader community that we have yet to beg for crowdfunding. Although, if it works for Aaron Rodgers, maybe we'll do it too. Have a great day. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.